everyone. Welcome back to Ms. Bertazzoni's Reading Corner. Today we are going to read 3 more stories from Sideways Stories from the Wayside School by Louis Sachar. My hope is to get through all of the stories in the book by the end of the school year. So we've got to catch up a little bit, and so we're going to do 3 today. First story we're going to read is about Dee Dee. And here is Dee Dee, and she seems to be kicking a ball. Let's see what that's all about. This story contains a problem and a solution. Dee Dee was a mousy-looking kid. Unlike most children at Wayside School, she liked recess better than spelling. As soon as the recess bell rang, she would jump up from her seat and run out the door. There were big signs in Wayside School on every floor. No jumping down the stairs. Dee Dee never seemed to notice the signs. She jumped down the stairs. Some children took the stairs 2 at a time. Dee Dee took them 10 at a time. That was on the way down. It was funny. She never seemed to be in quite the same hurry on the way back up. There was another sign at Wayside School. No cutting across the grass. Dee Dee must not ever have seen that one either. She cut across the grass and ran up to Louis, the yard teacher. "I want a green ball," Dee Dee said. The green balls were the best. "I'm all out of green balls," said Louis. "Okay, then I want a red ball," said Dee Dee. The red balls were just about as good as the green balls. They didn't bounce as high, but actually sometimes you don't want a ball to bounce too high. "I'm all out of red balls too," said Louis. "Do you have anything left?" asked Dee Dee. Dee Dee meant anything besides the yellow ball. There was one yellow ball at Wayside School, and Louis was always trying to get rid of it. It didn't bounce, and it never went the way it was kicked. "Anything at all?" asked Dee Dee. "Today is your lucky day," said Louis. "I have one ball left just for you. The one and only yellow ball." "No thanks," said Dee Dee. "Ah, come on, take it," said Louis. "Why don't you ever have any green or red balls?" asked Dee Dee. "I do," said Louis, "but the other children ask first. By the time you get out here, they're all gone." "But that's because I have to come all the way from the 30th floor. How do you expect me to compete with the kids from the 1st or 2nd? She asked. "That's why I saved you the yellow ball," said Louis. "Everybody wanted it, but I saved it just for you." "I bet," said Dee Dee. She took the yellow ball and bounced it on the ground. It stopped dead with a thud. She stepped back, ran up and kicked it. It went backwards over her head. She didn't bother chasing it. Instead, she played hopscotch with Jenny and Leslie. She thought it was disgusting. The next day, Dee Dee asked Mrs. Jules if she could go to recess early. "Why?" asked Mrs. Jules. "So I can get a green ball before Louis gives them all away," said Dee Dee. "I'm glad you have a good reason," said Mrs. Jules. "Yes, you may go, but first spell Mississippi for me." Spelling was not Dee Dee's best subject. By the time she finally got it right, she was 5 minutes late for recess. She jumped down the stairs, cut across the grass, and ran up to Louis. There were no green balls left. There were no red balls left. However, there was still the yellow ball. Dee Dee played jump rope with Joy and Marisha. It was no better than hopscotch. So Dee Dee's problem was to figure out a way to get a green ball, or at least a red ball. You already know that this story also contains a solution. Dee Dee figured it out. See if you can too. Remember everything you know about Dee Dee, Wayside School, and Mrs. Jules. Hint: The next day, Dee Dee brought a cream cheese and jelly sandwich, some nuts, and shredded cheese in her lunchbox. Here's what happened. Just before recess, Dee Dee smeared the cream cheese and jelly all over her face. Then she stuffed her mouth with nuts and hung the shredded cheese from her nose. When she closed her eyes, she looked like a dead rat. Todd was in on the plan. "Mrs. Jules," he called, "there's a dead rat in the classroom." Mrs. Jules was very put out. "I want that dead rat out immediately," she said. When Mrs. Jules said immediately, she meant it. Dee Dee instantly found herself outside on the playground. "I want a green ball," she said. Louis pretended he hadn't heard her. "May I please have a green ball?" asked Dee Dee. Louis gave her a green ball. "I don't know how you did it, Dee Dee, but you're first today," he said. When Mrs. Jules found out that Dee Dee and Todd had tricked her, she sent Todd home on the kindergarten bus. Dee Dee threw the green ball on the ground. It bounced 50 feet straight up in the air, and then she caught it. "You don't like me, do you?" she asked Louis. "Sure I do," said Louis. "No, you don't," said Dee Dee. "Yes, I like you," said Louis. "No, you don't," Dee Dee insisted. "Yes, I like you. I really do," said Louis. "Are you sure?" asked Dee Dee. "Yes," said Louis. "Don't you believe me?" "I guess so," said Dee Dee. "Do you like me?" asked Louis. "You bet," said Dee Dee. "You're my best friend." "Terrific," said Louis. "I always wanted to be best friends with the dead rat." All right, our next story is about DJ. And there's DJ right in the middle with a big grin on his face. DJ skipped up the 30 flights of stairs to Mrs. Jules's room. He was grinning from ear to ear, from nose to chin, from here to there, and back again. "Hey, DJ," Todd shouted. "Glad to see you." Todd was a pushover for smiling faces. Mrs. Jules heard Todd. She began to write Todd's name on the board under discipline. But when she saw DJ smile, she put down the chalk. "Good morning, DJ," she said. "What are you so happy about?" DJ grinned and shrugged his shoulders. Mrs. Jules smiled. Damien looked at the smile on Mrs. Jules's face, then at Todd's, and finally at DJ's. Then Damien smiled too. His smile was almost as big as DJ's. They were best friends. Once they saw the two of them smiling, the rest of the class couldn't help but smile. Rondi had a very cute one due to her 2 missing front teeth. Nobody had an ugly smile. Jason came to school late. He was very upset, but the first thing he saw was Damien's smile, and he felt a little bit better. Then he saw Rondi's toothless grin, and he even began to smile a little himself. But when he saw the smile on DJ's face, he fell laughing onto the floor. Everybody else started to laugh, even Kathy, and she hardly ever laughed except when somebody was hurt. The whole room seemed to be laughing, not just the people in it. The blackboard chuckled, the ceiling snickered, the desks were jumping up and down, and the chairs were slapping one another on the back. The floor was very ticklish. It laughed until the walls turned purple. The wastepaper basket started to sing, and all the pencils stood up and danced. Finally, things began to settle down. Mrs. Jules wiped her eyes and said, "DJ, why don't you tell the class why you are so happy? At least let us know what we're laughing about." But DJ just kept on smiling. "Oh, come on, DJ," said Dee Dee. "Tell us." DJ didn't say a word. He couldn't. His mouth was stretched out of shape. "Let us guess," said Ron. "If we guess right, will you tell us?" DJ nodded his head. His smile began to hurt his ears. Everyone took one guess. "Have you been swimming? Is it your birthday? Are you in love? Did you get a green ball?" Nobody guessed right. At recess, DJ was still smiling. Louis, the yard teacher, called, "Hey, DJ, come here." They walked to the far corner of the playground where they were alone. "What's up, DJ?" Louis asked. DJ just smiled. "Come on, DJ, you can tell me. Why are you so happy?" DJ looked up at him and he said, "You need a reason to be sad. You don't need a reason to be happy." Something good to think about. Our final story today is about John. There's John. Now, as you notice, this is kind of backwards. It's a mirror image. Well, John's got a different problem. John reads upside down. John had light brown hair and a round head. He was Joe's best friend. John was one of the smartest boys in Mrs. Jules's class. But he had one problem. He could only read words written upside down. Nobody ever wrote anything upside down. But it was only a little problem. John was in the high reading group. He just turned his book upside down. It was easier for John to turn his book upside down than to learn to read correctly. But the easiest way isn't always the best way. Mrs. Jules said, "John, you can't go on reading like this. You can't spend the rest of your life turning your books upside down." "Why not?" asked John. "Because I said so," said Mrs. Jules. "Besides, what happens when I write something on the blackboard? You can't turn the blackboard upside down." "No, I guess you're right," said John. "I know I'm right," said Mrs. Jules. "You are going to have to learn to stand on your head." John couldn't stand on his head. He had given up trying. You would have too if you had fallen over as many times as he had. Joe was John's best friend. He could stand on John's head. Every time John fell over, Joe stood on his head. After all, what are best friends for? "My head is too round, Mrs. Jules. I can't stand on it," said John. "Of course you can, John," said Mrs. Jules. "If Joe can stand on your head, so can you." "It's easy, John," said Joe. "I can't," John repeated. "I always fall over." "Nonsense," said Mrs. Jules. "All you have to do is find your center of balance. Now, up you go." John put his round head on the floor and swung his legs up. He fell right over. Then Joe stood on John's head. "See, John, it's easy. Nothing to it," Joe said. "We'll help you, John," said Mrs. Jules. "Joe, get off John's head. Get me a pillow from under my desk. Nancy, Calvin, come here and give us a hand." Mrs. Jules took the pillow from Joe and set it on the floor. "All right, John, we'll surround you," she said. "We won't let you fall." John put his head on the pillow and swung his legs up. He started to fall one way, but Nancy pushed him back up. Then he started to fall another way, but Calvin straightened him out. John kept falling a little bit this way and that way until at last he found his center of balance. And look, you can't really tell, but this paragraph is upside down. So now I have to turn the book upside down. "Hey, look at me," he said. "I'm up. I'm really up. I'm standing on my head. I found my center of balance. It's beautiful. I can read the blackboard. Hey, Calvin, bring me a book and you don't have to turn it upside down. Ha ha! Hey, hoo! Bam! While Calvin went to get the book, John fell flat on his face. You better stay off my head, Joe, he warned. Are you all right, John? Asked Mrs. Jules. Yes, I think so. I feel a little funny. Hey, I can still read the blackboard and I'm not upside down. I can read right side up now. When I fell, I must have flipped my brain or something. That is wonderful, John, said Mrs. Jules. Here, put the pillow back under my desk. As a reward, you may have a Tootsie Roll Pop. They are in the coffee can on top of my desk. John placed the pillow on top of her desk. Then he looked under the desk, but he couldn't find the Tootsie Roll Pops anywhere. Poor John. He could read right side up, but everything else was upside down now. Okay, that is it for today. I will have another installment for you in a few days. Have a wonderful couple of days. Looking forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.